I did watch the Bama game, and it was fascinating to watch. So I have two takes on both the Bama game and Nick Saban's presser. Number one, it is so weird to watch Alabama look human.
Yeah,
I think that's part. It's a whole expectation thing.
Mm-hmm.
We expect that they're either we don't expect perfection. This is my view. I don't expect perfection every time they come out. Because we've seen them before,
Yeah.
right? Okay, they make some mistakes, but then you have that kind of, all right, they're going to correct it. They're going to the missed passes, and I just kept waiting, and you kept waiting, and as we come to the end, I remember thinking, okay, they're human. It's not just a machine.
Yeah.
And I know Bama fans don't want to hear that, but that's what they look like. They look like a football team who had a bad game.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed, and is at the presser, Nick Saban seemed so much more philosophical than he usually does. Like, he went into this whole thing. I didn't have time to edit it. This whole thing about it's not the game. It's obviously it's prepping for the game. At the game, everybody wants to win. Nobody wants to lose. It's about developing tiny habits. He sounded like a psychologist.
Yeah.
Developing tiny habits, and it's the process. There's things that we need to work on, but it didn't have that that Nick Saban kind of cranky, just a little bit of cranky.
Yeah.
I felt like he was reflective. I'm telling you, that's a when somebody goes from sort of cantankerous to not soft, but just a little more philosophical.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Bama fan, we're Nick Saban's reemerging at the end of his career.
I would not say the end of his career.
Towards the twilight.
I think he's still got 4 or 5 more years.
Yeah, well, I don't mean the last year.
Yeah. I think he's getting older. I think he's got grandkids. I think he looks at life more philosophically, and I think he probably does it with his players. And he knows what mistakes they made. I mean, that defense looked incredibly pedestrian in the second half.
Yep.
And much to your point, I don't think anyone makes adaptions or changes at halftime more than Nick Saban does, or better than Nick Saban does. And so to see the way they performed, and whenever Alabama looks like they're having a difficult time, they get the lead, you're almost willing to turn it off because you feel like they've got it covered. and kudos to Jimbo Fisher. I mean, first assistant coach in 25 tries to get the better of Nick Saban. It's the first time they lost since November 30th of 2019. It was also the first time they lost to a non-ranked team since 2007. I remember being at a friend of mine's wedding when they lost to La Monroe in Nick Saban's first year. And everyone was like, what in the hell do we get ourselves into here? And I remember my buddy come up to me afterwards and said, did Alabama lose? Because they were going through their wedding vows during the game. And I said, yeah. And he goes, this marriage is never going to last. There's no way I could get married and Nick Saban and Alabama loses to La Monroe. And I started, no. No, it lasted about 4 or 5 years. It was funny. Obviously, he was kidding, but he's like, this is a bad omen for me. I was like, yeah. So the fact that you're getting married on a Saturday during college football season, number one, and number two, they lost a lot.
I'm telling you, I hope he writes. He has a John Wooden quality without a John Wooden personality.
Yeah.
I just really, the more I sort of listen to him and look at the way he talks about his team, man, if you ran a business that way, if you ran your life that way, minus, and again, we don't see the grandfather Nick Saban, so there's a little bit of a abrasive, but his whole thing about it's got such a classic John Wooden feel, which is it is all about preparation for your big day, and at your big day, you may or may not come out victorious.
Yeah,
and I like that.
They're human, and they're not going to win them all. Now, they had been on a hell of a run. They had the longest streak in the country. And again, that streak against unranked teams was at 100, which is unbelievable. I'm not going to go as far as like UConn women's basketball streak. No, it was crazy, but it's still all in front of them. People are like, they believe they have to run the table. I don't know that. I did sports radio for 14 years, and even with 3 weeks left in the season, they're done. They're finished. There's no way they can make it. And we love the word chaos. We love the word chaos in college football. We saw a lot of it this weekend. There's always 2 or 3 weekends where teams that you think there's no way they could lose, and teams that you know the way there's going to win, they win. And so it's all in front of them. They're 5th in the country right now. The ratings don't even mean anything anymore right now. But they still have it all in front of them. But Georgia, who knocked off Auburn this weekend, looks like Kirby Smart's ready to take maybe that crown away
That's the
from
other
Nick.
fascinating
He looked
thing.
fantastic.
What do you
that defense is great.
What do you do when you train? 'Cause you see this in business, right? You have your proteges, people who train your vice presidents and your executive vice presidents who go out and start their own companies. And you want them to be successful, right? Because you've trained them.
Sure.
Then what happens when they start kicking your ass?
Well, it's like when Aldo Greco's son finally beat him on the golf course.
Yeah. Well, but
you're happy because they came from your loins and from your teachings, and it bums you out. It sucks.
Yeah, but Al's career's like, I mean, yes, I agree, but like Nick Saban has, it's such a timing thing. If you think about it, because you say he's got 4 or 5 years left, or whatever he's got. He's got 4 or 5 years in which his proteges could beat him. It'd be different, and I'm not saying this, but it'd be different if this was his last year.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
It would be much more poetic.
Sure.
Versus now, which is, damn it, I trained them too well.
Well, and I mean, I know it's an unranked opponent, but you're talking about a team that only lost 1 game last year.
Right.
They lost a couple of games this year. A&M did, and it's Jimbo Fisher. He's won a national title himself.
That's
so
right.
Anytime you're favored by 18, you lose. It's not a good loss. I'm not going to say it's a bad loss. It's certainly a loss they can get over. I thought we saw that with the Florida game, but see, and the thing is, and when I tweeted this thing out, I don't think people realize what we're going through and how special this is. When you go to the Swamp, anytime you win a football game is good.
Yes.
But when it's Alabama, you don't win by 14. You're like, whew, just got away with one. Well, I mean, again, very pedestrian the second half. They got a lot of work to do. You had Alabama guys running into each other. It didn't look good, and certainly in the second half, so they got some work to do. But hopefully, you don't want to lose late in the season. You want to lose early, and they've still got the entire table set for them, so they'll be all right.
Good.
They'll be okay. I still think, and there's a friend of ours that Hollywood that tweets me, and he's like, why in the hell can Clemson lose 1 game and they're done, and Alabama loses a game and they're still in? I said, Nick Saban. Alabama is a dynasty right now. It's still a dynasty. It's a legacy. It's tradition. It's all that stuff. And I promise you that every college football committee member wants Alabama to get in. They want this, like Duke last year. You wanted Duke to win out because it's better when Duke's in it. Because when Duke loses, fans love it. When Duke wins, fans love it. And they want Alabama.
Krzyzewski, I mean, it's a weird thing because you're right. It's not complete. It isn't completely objective. Mm-hmm. It's not just on wins and losses.
It really is, and unfortunately, it's not.
It's like gymnastics.
The playoffs are better when Alabama and Clemson's in it right now.
Right.
Yep.
Interesting.
So we'll see. And then you got this little podunk Cincinnati who needs chaos in order to make the Final Four, and then you got 5 teams in the Big Ten in the top 10, and that's not going to happen because they're all going to beat each other up. They play each other 6 times, so we'll see what happens.